back. Time now for Today Property Watch. There are now calls for older Australians to do their bit to ease our housing crisis, maybe downsize from their large family homes to smaller properties, making way for the next generation.
But is that realistic? Domain's property editor Alice Stoltz joins us now from Melbourne. Good morning to you, Alice. It's really hard for young families to find homes that are big enough in their budget, but do they really need to wait until their parents move on?
Good morning, guys. Look, part of the problem today is that many of us living in houses that are either too big or too small for us. Now, in theory, an ageing population normally does downsize their home, that idea of an empty nester, for the younger, more growing families to come through and take sort of that sort of structure of housing, I suppose. But increasingly, we're finding that downsizers in particular aren't moving on from their home. You can see up on the screen here the number of people who owned outright, which we assume is a more mature generation, have around nearly half of them have 2 extra bedrooms. And you look at that compared to a rental property, which has got much more sort of fluidity in terms of how often people are turning over those properties. And you can really understand that older generations just aren't leaving their bigger houses.
Well, Alice, why? Why are they latching onto these bigger homes?
Look, it's largely to do with the fact of the cost of buying and selling. Now, we know taxes like stamp duty, which is often dubbed the laziest tax around, are real sort of hurdles for people to jump over when it comes to buying a new home. You can see just how much it costs here around the country. You know, in Queensland it can be up to 5.75%. This is all depending on how much the property is that you're buying. New South Wales up to 7%, just absolutely enormous. And Victoria also can get up to 5.5%, South Australia 5.5%, and over in Perth, it's around 5.15%. But basically, you know, when you have to think about what they have to buy, that is one hurdle that they have to sort of swallow, I suppose. And also, some of the time, the properties that they want aren't there for them. The wonderful thing about life is that we often love the area and the community that we're living in. Now, increasingly, our planning isn't really meeting the needs of people when they do want to downsize. So these people who have had a lovely family home in an area where their kids went to school, when it comes to selling, the expectation is they might have to move to an apartment over a couple of levels in an area where their friends aren't. So they're more reluctant to do so.
Or if you're like my parents, you need the spare bedrooms for all the grandkids when you do all the babysitting, because it's very important. But what might motivate people to move?
Look, I think a lot of it is really understanding and thinking quite profoundly around the tax structure when it comes to how we buy and sell property. Again, like these inefficient taxes like stamp duty, could we look at replacing that with a land tax is one option. But also I think we need to thinking about increasing the downsizer contribution. That's another part that can incentivise downsizers to actually sell, as well as planning laws that are sort of creating properties that are fit for purpose. So we're actually creating stock that people want to downsize into. You can see up on the screen though, first home buyers are exempt from stamp duty, usually up to a certain point in most states. So New South Wales, a first home buyer, will be exempt from stamp duty up to $800,000. In Victoria, that's up to $600,000 for the property's price. Queensland up to $500,000. South Australia, nothing available there for you in terms of exemptions, and WA up to $430,000. So we do have some stamp duty exemptions which make it easier to buy a property, but you know, should we be looking at that across the board?
Alice, a favourite for us on a Saturday morning, we want to have a look at some unique homes on the market. There's plenty for us as well.
We've got an incredible harbourside house up in Vaucluse in Sydney today. This house is all about the views. It's 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and it is a stunning harbourside resident. It's just 100 metres to Hermit Bay Beach, and you can look out to Middle Harbour, Rose Bay from almost every room, and it has 2 street frontages. Contact agent for that price if that view is enticing you. Heading down now to Victoria to Main Ridge, which is such a beautiful spot on Melbourne's Mornington Peninsula. This is a great property that offers that sort of balance of town and country life, I suppose, because Main Ridge is just about an hour from Melbourne. You've got Red Hill and Flinders nearby, and this amazing hotel-style pool, which I just think looks absolutely spectacular. And this is maybe what every luxury house needs these days, a vineyard producing its own boutique drop of wine. On the market for 11.5 to 12.5 million. And finally, we're going to Doonan on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland today. Now, this is an incredible brutalist style house in the Noosa hinterland. Now, it's a T-shaped pavilion over 2 levels. And now brutalism is that style of architecture that emerged in the 50s after the war, that was kind of the anti-fussy style of homes and has lots of bold wood textures and concrete, and was the opposite of like Art Deco style of architecture. So an incredible property, around $20 million for that one.
Looks good, Alice. Hey, before you go, congratulations as a Blues fan.
What
it
a
pains
match.
me to say.
You're being very grown up about it, Clint. I'm very impressed.
I'm not really. I'm sooking in the ad breaks, trust me.
He is, trust me.
Just incredible. Melbourne just came alive last night.
It did. Thanks for your time.
More to come,
Thanks,
Alice.
guys.
More to come. Thanks, Alice.
What's behind this boom?
Yeah, this is a real story of growth for Australia's population. We've grown by 560,000 people in the last 12 months, and more than 80% of that growth is through net overseas migration. So the birth rate has slowed down a little bit, but it's largely through net overseas migration. So over 450,000 people arriving for work and with family. So it's a great story for the diverse community that now is growing even faster than ever.
But anyone who is house hunting, whether that be to buy or to rent, knows we're in a housing crisis at the moment. Isn't this extra population going to put pressure on that?
That's right. It's a story of the business community probably celebrating that there's a bigger market to sell to, and we need more staff for those jobs, but we've got to house people, and not just house them, they need the services. They need education, health, transport. And so this housing crisis, I think, really is almost the opposite side of the coin, is that it's a city building opportunity. We need to think big for the future of Australia. We are going to continue to grow.
Big increases in Sydney and Melbourne specifically. What about the economy? How is it going to impact jobs, inflation, for instance?
Yeah, I think in terms of our job market, things will continue to stay tight as our population grows. The labour market will stay pretty tight. Unemployment will stay low as we continue to grow and build businesses to serve this growing population. And particularly that Victorian state has had the fastest growth in the last 12 months. So the largest growth is down there. It's really a good story for businesses, but a challenging story on that housing front. So there is some creative thinking, I think, needed in Australia right now around the housing.
Are we doing enough creative thinking though? Well,
I think the short-term focus is the challenge, and even the intergenerational report had a population growth rate of 1.1%. This last 12 months was double that at 2.2%. So our planning is based on those figures, and we're growing faster than expected once again. And so how does Australia prepare for long-term growth, reaching 40 million people by 2050? We need to build another 5 million houses in the next 2.5 decades, not just 1 million in the next 5 years. We've got a long-term growth journey ahead of us.
So is this data then a bit of a wake-up call for politicians right around the country?
I really think every Australian should be considering the positive story. We do want to have a growing population. We need it for our ageing population. We've got to see that economy continue to grow, but we've got to plan for livability. That's what brand Australia is known for. We have a great place to live, but we need to maintain that with great cities into the future, right across Australia, east to west.
So what do we need then? If we're planning, what exactly do we need to plan for?
Yeah, I think we need to think innovatively about using kind of new technology. Build cities from the internet up is one phrase I've heard, and it's an opportunity to connect those cities. We need to build renewable cities that are smart, that are creative, that are connected, and also prosperous. We've got to create places that are going to thrive for decades, if not centuries into the future here in this.
Jeff, you're a glass half full kind of guy, and I like it.
Positive is the way, but population growth's exciting, but it's also got to be well planned for. That's the key from this data.
Yeah, Jeff Brayley, thanks so much for your time.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my God, Carl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports, and amazing Aussie stories.
And Carl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
that never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?